Let's go check out the top business news stories. Our business editor, Kate Moody's here. Hi there, Kate.
Hi, Tom.
Let's begin with the news that inflation still rising in Europe, just at another record high.
Yeah, up from 5% in December to 5.1% in January. That's according to the initial estimates for the Eurozone. It is the highest level since those records began back in 1997. The 19 countries that use the euro have different ways of calculating inflation, but when you look at their harmonized numbers, you saw Lithuania with the fastest pace of price rises, over 12%, 5.1% in Germany, 3.3% here in France. Energy prices are driving that increase. They were up by almost 29% over the past year. By comparison, food, alcohol, and tobacco prices rose by just under 4%. These figures are going to put more pressure on the European Central Bank to act by scaling back support for the economy or raising interest rates, as we've seen the U.S. Federal Reserve commit to doing. The International Monetary Fund has urged policymakers not to move too quickly, even while it acknowledged on Wednesday that inflation was a more persistent and significant economic and social problem than had previously been expected. Well, Hungary, which is an EU member state but not part of the Eurozone, has imposed price controls to combat its highest inflation in over a decade. As of Tuesday, the government has capped the price of 7 basic food products, including sugar, flour, sunflower oil, pork, chicken, and milk, all of them being left at their October cost. The measure has been enacted for 90 days. Consumer prices in Hungary were 7.4% higher in December than a year earlier. That's a 14-year high. Governments around the world have tried to control price surges with similar measures for decades, but most economists argue that while they can temporarily ease pressure on consumers, price controls are not an effective long-term strategy to combat inflation. In Egypt, inflation stands officially at around 6%. For many years, the government has subsidized the price of certain food products at an annual cost of around $5.5 billion. Now, with inflation on the rise, authorities are considering rolling back a popular program which provides cheap bread to millions of families. Wasim Korneh has more.
It's a lifeline for almost 2/3 of Egypt's population. Every day, more than 60 million people get 5 loaves of bread for about 50 cents a month. But the government program is facing growing criticism. With the global price of wheat on the rise, the subsidy scheme is weighing too much on the national budget.
احنا شغالين على هذا الموضوع لأن النهارده يقينا أنا بقول لحضراتكم وأنا قاعد في أعداد ليست بقليلة بتاخد هذا الدعم وهي غير مستحقة.
Authorities are treading carefully, though. In 1977, President Anwar Sadat ended subsidies on flour, rice, and cooking oil. Hundreds of thousands of working-class people rioted for 2 days. 79 people were killed. Some researchers argue the financial burden would be lessened by only giving benefits out to the poorest households and by focusing on long-term benefits.
There's some losers still, though. It's going to be the people in the middle who previously were getting a little bit of help with their food budgets from having access to the ration card. They're going to be cut off in the short term. But of course, along with the rest of Egypt, they will gain in the long term if you don't have this heavy drag of the government deficit spending.
Egypt's government is exploring several options, from money specifically given to buy bread to more general cash handouts favored by many economists. It aims to finalize the plans by March, just in time for budget preparations.
Fresh data show the U.S. private sector has shed jobs for the first time in over a year. 301,000 people were cut from payrolls in January as the latest wave of COVID infections took their toll. The leisure and hospitality industries saw the biggest cuts. The U.S. labor market has been booming, but this could be a setback for the government's unemployment report, which is due out on Friday. Well, the American government's debt load has hit a new high. New data from the Treasury Department show the national debt surpassed $30 trillion at the end of January. That is $7 trillion more than it was about 2 years ago, and it reflects the huge emergency spending to support households and businesses during the pandemic. Many experts have warned that the government's current levels of borrowing and spending are unsustainable. Lawmakers have been divided over raising the debt ceiling, putting the country on the verge of default several times over the last year. And concerns over the debt load have also had political ramifications, holding up some of the Biden administration's infrastructure agenda. Oil prices are hovering near their highest level since 2014 as the OPEC producers cartel and allies, including Russia, decided to stick with their cautious pace of increasing supplies, about 400,000 barrels per day in March. The group slashed their output as demand and prices plummeted at the start of the pandemic. They've been slow to boost their pumps since then, despite pressure from other economies. According to OPEC forecasts, demand for oil will return to pre-pandemic levels in the second half of the year. The U.S. and other countries have even taken the unusual step of releasing oil from their national reserves, but it hasn't done much to curb that increase in prices. Well, here in France, an increasing number of people are choosing to retrofit their petrol or diesel cars with electric motors. It can help to slash running costs, and it's better for the environment, but it's not cheap, as Yuka Royer explains.
It may be time to stop filling up your car and start charging it, even if it takes longer. This garage runs a service to convert an old car into an electric vehicle, like this vintage Citroën 2 chevaux.
On retire tout ce qui vient de la propulsion thermique du véhicule et on remplace par un cœur électrique.
The practice of retrofitting, or electrical conversion, has been authorized in France since April of 2020. It's not cheap.
Le retrofit, on doit être sur 12 900 € avec des déductions des taxes qui permettent de refaire quelques centaines de milliers de kilomètres peut-être avec ce nouveau cœur.
The expensive makeover will reward its owner at the pump. The cost of charging an electric car at home is about €3 per 100 kilometers. At current prices, running the same distance on diesel or petrol will cost almost 3 times as much. The French government is encouraging people to retrofit their cars with a grant of up to €5,000. Car makers are also investing in this field. Renault plans to convert 45,000 conventional cars into electric vehicles annually at a factory near Paris. Not every car is worth the investment, though, according to one specialist.
Ça ne peut pas s'adapter à des voitures qui n'ont plus une grande valeur d'usage. Des voitures anciennes qui sont de toute petite valeur et sur lesquelles on ne ferait pas 10 000 € de réparation. On ne va pas faire 10 000 € de transformation.
Nonetheless, the government's Ecological Transition Agency estimates that up to 1.25 million out of France's 38 million existing cars could be electrified by 2030.